All right, let me share a screen here. So this is the last session of the sort of the last series, I guess. Wait, last session of the three-part series. There we go. So we have been focusing the last 2 weeks. You guys have the right screen? Okay. Last 2 weeks, we've been focusing on the three money models. These are the also called the three pillars of wealth, which is how do we earn money? How do we save money? How do we invest money? Right? Under the philosophy that at the end of the day, like all things, most things are simple, not easy. Wealth is that simple. That doesn't mean that it's easy, but if we don't know how to earn money, then we can't ever save money. If we know how to earn it and don't save it, we have nothing to invest. And if we don't invest, we never build real true wealth. Right. So if you break it down to its simplest form, those really are the three pillars. How do we earn it? How do we save it? How do we invest it? So we went through the first two over the last two sessions. Today we're going to lean into investing. Now, there are a million different ways and things that we can invest. You can't possibly cover all of those in an hour. What we're going to talk about is a framework, and we're going to touch base on strengths, weaknesses, and different components that you should consider within your wealth building strategies and your investing strategies. So, number one, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Matt Erdman. I am the operating principal of KW Legacy Partners. Been in real estate for 20 some odd years. I think it's 22, 23, somewhere in that ballpark. I've been with KW for all of about two of that. Have sat in a whole bunch of different leadership roles. I've been a real estate investor for a really long time, rental properties, also ran a large flip company for 5-6 years, and the founder of a software company called Ari Profit as well. So for those of you who are just meeting me, that is me, also father, husband. Should have said that first because it's the most important. That is who I am not. I am not a CPA. I'm not a tax attorney, and I am not a financial advisor. I'm sorry I have to tell you this every time we talk. But we live in a litigious world, so it's important that I do. So all the information that I provide is for information purposes only. And if you want to go implement it in your world, make sure you do it with the help of a professional. The way I always say it is always listen, always learn, always verify. And lastly, if at any point we're talking about lead generation, always do our lead generation in a TCPA compliant way. All right, now that we got all the ways I can get sued out of the way, let's dive into the topics. Rule number one. The secret to building wealth, again, trying to boil things down real simple, is to spend less than you make and invest the difference. Right? That's a Tony Robbins quote. And at its simplest form, that's what it is. Again, goes back to those three models that we talked about. Rule number two, you guys can screenshot this, write it down, take notes. Remember that debt on depreciating assets equals fragility. Okay. Equity in appreciating and cash flowing assets and cash on hand equals anti-fragility. So when we think about fragility and anti-fragility, this is a concept that came from a book that I believe was actually called Anti-Fragility or Fragility, one of the two. But there was an interesting concept in the book that everything exists in one of three forms: fragile, which is very easy to understand. It's easy to break. Then there's robust, which is very difficult to break, right? It takes a lot to break it, maybe comparing glass to plastic. But then there are things that when you put them under stress, they actually get stronger. That is what anti-fragility is. So when you think about financials and wealth building, you can apply that concept and think about the fact that when times are tough, right, who tends to benefit the most in challenging times? Tends to be the people who have money, yes? Right? Because opportunities present themselves in hard times, and it's those who are in a position to capitalize that typically benefit. That is an example of them being financially anti-fragile, right? At a time where many are being harmed by whatever the market conditions or situations are, they're in a position to actually benefit from them. That would be anti-fragile, okay? So we're going to walk through the path of money, and then we're going to lead it down the roads into the investing piece. So this is just a quote from Gary Keller from The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. The path of money describes the ways that money flows in and out of your life. Some people let their money wander wherever it wants to go, but that's not what millionaires do. They direct their money to the places that will bring them the greatest financial growth and the most substantial net worth, right? Really important piece to focus on net worth. So if you walk through this quickly, number one, we have two forms of capital, right? So the flow of money starts at the top, two forms of capital. We have human capital, that's us doing work. And then we have capital assets, which is our money going to work for us. This kind of goes back to like the four quadrants of employee, self-employed, right? Entrepreneur and investor. Did I get those quadrants wrong? I feel like I got one of those wrong. I bet you Josh knows. Joshua Brown, did I get one of those quadrants wrong?
Just like when I talked to my wife, I heard like the last thing you said, but I missed the whole
Okay.
beginning.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. That's wonderful. It's all
If
right.
I'm
Not
being honest.
No, it's good. I appreciate that. So we have two forms of capital: the work that we do, and then the work that our money can do after we've earned it and we put it to work for us. Right? That is where we get our cash flow. Right? Then once we have cash flow, we can decide what to do with the money. Right? We can spend it, we can save it, we can donate it, and we can invest it. Right? Those are really our four options. Right? So now we got to figure out, are we going to spend it? Are we going to save it? Are we going to invest it? If we're going to invest it, what are we going to invest it in? So number one, you can't really have a wealth building model without having a savings model. So you have to have a spending and a savings model. Again, it goes back to, you have to earn it, save it, and invest it. You can't take one of the three out of the equation without it falling down. So here's two models that you can look at, right? One is the 50-25-25 rule, which basically says 50% of your monthly income goes for your housing, utilities, groceries, transportation, all those need to spend expenses, right? Those are all the things I need in order to exist in the modern world. 25% of your monthly income is for optional expenses. The remaining 25% is for debt reduction, savings, and investing, and should you choose, giving. Right? So if you use that model, you can reverse engineer how much money do I have to earn, right? Because if you think about this, it's really an algebra equation, right? If I want to build wealth, I either have to save a certain amount of money to be able to invest a certain amount of money, but I have to earn a certain amount in order to save that amount. What amount do I have to invest to get the return I want? Well, if that's the case, then how much do I have to earn in order to save enough to invest it? Right? Basics of algebra is I can take out any one component. As long as I know two, I can figure out the other. Same idea here. So you can take this and you can reverse engineer it. You can look at it and say, okay, I need to calculate the total required monthly expenses. If I figure out what my expenses are, I can double that, and that tells me that's how much I have to earn after taxes in order to be able to live on 50% of my expenses. So the way we would do this is, if you have some form of an app that's tracking your personal expenses. If not, go to your bank statement, print a month, go through and highlight all the things that are need to spends, everything that falls in this bucket of I have to spend this in order to have a functional life in the world that I live in. Take that times two. Based on this model, that would be the earnings goal that you would want to go after taxes, right? So double whatever that number is would allow you to live on half your expenses for needs, 25% of your income for wants, and 25% for debt reduction, investments, and giving. Does that make sense? Okay. Then you have a second model. The idea behind this model is just it's a little bit more simple, and it is also a little bit less effective, but it's a little bit more simple, right? If you don't have any real structure around your thoughts, your plans, or your actions with respect to saving and investing, this is better than having nothing. The first model is far more effective. Also, it can be a stepping stone, right? If you run that math on that first model and you're like, wow, the income gap for me to be able to do that is significant from where I am and where I need to get to, then maybe you start with the 80-10-10 rule and work yourself towards that 50-20-25. So this is just a little simpler. You have to live on 80% of your total income. You have to save 10% of your total income, and that leaves 10% left for debt reduction, additional savings, and giving. Right? As a general rule, and this does tie to investing because this is all related. As a general rule, we want to focus on reducing debt before we're investing. Right? It doesn't make sense to be earning a return here and paying interest here unless this interest is on a cash flowing asset. Right? We're not talking about mortgages on rental properties. We're talking about predominantly revolving debt. Right? If we have revolving debt on credit cards that we're paying high interest on, or we're turning around and investing, the reality is we'd be better off to eliminate the debt, build our cash reserves, and then invest in those strategies. So those are kind of two spending models. Right? Now let's go to the investing side. So we really have two buckets that we can choose to invest in. And those two buckets kind of break up into two buckets. So there's sort of two categories inside of each bucket. So we have our passive investment strategies and our active investment strategies. And within each of those buckets, you're either lending or owning. So on the passive side, you have all the investment vehicles that we can put money into, which are primarily, within the stock market, right? It's on the lending side, it's money markets, it's CDs, it's bonds, it's T-bills. Those are all things where we're essentially lending the government money and we're getting some form of a predominantly fixed return back. And it's relatively low risk, right? So most of those are going to be low risk, low return, which tends to be the case with most things we invest in. Not always, but predominantly higher risk usually brings higher rewards and vice versa. So on the passive side, you've got the lending, which would be your money markets, your CDs, your bonds, your T-bills. On the own side would be if you buy stocks, if you buy REITs, if you buy mutual funds, if you buy crypto, any of those types of things that you actually own that asset would be the other version of passive. So in one, I'm loaning the money based on set terms. The other side, I'm buying a piece of a thing that I own. My return is going to come from that business performing well, and in turn causing the stock to perform well. And that's where my return is coming from. Then we go to the other side, which is our active investing. And it's the same two buckets that live inside of that. You've got your lending side and you've got your owning side. The lending side would be I'm providing owner financing or private lending. Right? Owner financing would be providing financing on a property that I own. So I'm selling you a property and I'm providing the financing. Private lending would be I'm putting up the money for you to purchase properties like short-term investments, flips. That's typically where that private money lending is going to show up. We'll talk a little bit about those things, but private money can be a very high return. Obviously, you need access to a fair amount of capital in order to be able to do that. So every one of these investment strategies has a place in space and time and has to do with risk tolerance, resources, the returns that we're looking for, all of those things. And then on the own side is businesses and real estate. Right? We can own a business, which all of us who are in real estate do, assuming we choose to actually operate it like a business. We all own a business, at least our real estate sales business, and then we have the ability to own the sticks and stones that is real estate, right? So those are kind of our four buckets: passive, active, lending, owning, right? That gives us our financial returns, and really from there, it's like a cycle. So let's look at some of the returns quickly, just to give you a general idea. This gives you an estimate over the last 30 years of all of those different vehicles that are in the passive side of the bucket and what the returns have been over the last 30 years. And as you can see, we talked about the higher the risk, the higher the return, the lower the risk, the lower the return. And that obviously shows up in the graph. You go all the way to the least amount of risk. That's going to be money markets, CDs, and T-bills, which give 2 to 3% returns. You might see that even in the 4 at sometimes. Then you jump up to bonds that are going to be probably 4 to 5, 5.5. Then you start to get into the S&P. S&P over a 30-year period is close to 10% return. It's probably 9 point something, 9.6, 9.7, 9.8 over 30 years. Get into REITs. REITs is owning real estate, but essentially owning it through an investment vehicle, right? You're investing, for simplicity's sake, in a stock that owns cash flowing real estate. Returns on those tend to be a little bit higher than the S&P. Those usually are like in the 9, 10, up to 12% returns historically over a similar period, right? So it just kind of shows you what some of the returns in those different places can look like. And then you get to stocks, bonds, or mutual funds and bonds, right? And they start to trail off a little bit. So it gives you a little bit of an idea. I will say this, and we're going to talk about different strategies, and we'll take questions and any other additional input people have too. I will say early, I think I poo-pooed the markets way more than I should. That is a professional financial term, by the way, poo-poo. I was 100% not interested in the markets for a really, really long time. I just wanted to put the money that I earned back into businesses that I control. And my belief behind that was that I could get a bigger return by putting them into businesses that I owned the trajectory of. Like I could actually push the result rather than tying my money up with a thing that I have no influence over. I think long term, I wish I decided at a younger age to have a more balanced approach to that. Today, I would say I would spread that out a little more than I did early in my career. So I think it's important that you look at all the different investment vehicles, right? For the longest time, I was real estate and business, period, end of story. I didn't want to have any conversations about anything else, right? Then I started being a little more open to, okay, pre-tax investment strategies. Again, in reality, I wish younger I sat down with somebody smarter than me who guided me towards having a little more balance and a little more diversity, because I think you benefit from that significantly over time. Again, what you'll notice, passive lending, that's your money markets. Your returns were between 0.5 and 3%. Passive owning was between 6 and 10%, depending on the vehicle that we were looking at. This you can really just take a snapshot of if you want, but we're going to talk through this a little bit. This, I think, is really important when you're looking at investment strategies. This is my philosophy, and again, not a financial advisor. You get to a certain point where you're earning a certain amount of income, and it really becomes about keeping as much of that income as you possibly can. And tax strategies and all these things become really important. I look at it and say, anytime I can put money in a pre-tax investment vehicle, then I'm already saving 30, 40% or whatever my effective tax bracket is. So I look at that and say, okay, if I've got $100 and I've got to pay 30% taxes on that 100, well, I've only actually got $70 instead of $100. But if I can put that into a pre-tax investment vehicle, well, I'm up 30% day one in my mind because I would have gave that 30% away. And now that 70 plus that $30 can compound over time. So I look at those as being pretty attractive as a place to put your toe into the markets. Secondly, as a self-employed human, there are strategies that we can lace together that can become extremely significant time on task over time. So number one, the advantages of these, if you're going pre-tax, and again, you've got to talk to a financial planner about these things. There's advantages of pre-tax depending on your situations, your goals. There's also advantages to paying the taxes and then investing the money again, and or having a combination. But I think this is something important to talk about, especially when you're in that growth phase of your career. I feel like this is a smart strategy if you can afford to tuck money into this. So one is it delays your taxes and allows what you would have lost in taxes to compound and grow over time. The government tends to essentially subsidize that discipline, um, because they want to see you funding those programs, but you're letting go of control of that money until you reach the age at which you can draw it without penalties. So it's a long-term commitment. Higher contribution limits for business owners. So this is the big piece here. Through SEP IRAs and solo 401ks, self-employed individuals can really pump a lot of money into these vehicles pre-tax. As you can see here, it's going to depend on what your income is, but you could potentially be stuffing 30, 70, even more $1,000 a year. And when I say stuffing, it sounds shady, like we're stuffing it in a pillowcase and like sneaking it out the back door, but it's 100% legal. But all that could be sheltered from taxes in that pre-tax vehicle. If you have a spouse that works for you, right, you can tie these together, right? Because there's strategies in which there's a certain amount that you can put away. You start tying the entity in which you're operating, which we'll talk about in a second. If you're operating as an S Corp, you're paying yourself through a payroll company. You can now contribute a certain amount as the business owner into that SEP or solo, but then you can also, as an employee, you can put in a certain amount and then you can match it as the employer. So it increases the amount of money that you can put into those accounts pre-tax. If you have a spouse who's an employee of the company, well, that she now or he now has the right to be able to fund that also, and you as an employer can match that. Again, you got to have conversations with a financial planner, but what I'm telling you is it is a structure that allows you to put a lot of money pre-tax into an investment vehicle that can continue to compound over time. Trade-offs is if you're doing it upfront, you will pay future taxes when you withdraw the money, right? Your options when you're looking at these type of retirement plans is I'm either putting the money in after tax so that I don't have to pay taxes when I take it out, or I'm putting it in pre-tax so that that extra money I would have paid in taxes is part of what's compounding, but I'm going to pay the taxes when I take it out. And this is best used as a foundational piece of kind of the financial castle that we're building. So as we choose our investments, right, those are going to continue to create more cash flow for us. And it really just becomes a cycle that we're funneling that all the way back around to the top of the funnel to decide is that money that we're spending, donating, saving, investing, comes right back down. Okay, with that money, are we pouring more of it into the passive side, the active side? Are we lending it or owning it, right? This is a roadmap that you can just look at all the money flowing in and out of your world and just think about it exactly like this. So let's look at the active side of things. So I don't have slides for this. This is going to be more of a discussion. But if you look at sort of these four items, well, actually, I do have one. So you have your owner financing. That essentially might be I own a property. I'm going to sell you the property, but I'm also going to finance the property, right? There's financial advantages to that. I would argue that's a very long-term investment. My personal opinion, your return on investment on there isn't super high in order to be competitive with other financing options. It fits in the world somewhere for some people, for sure. Don't know that it's a thing that most of us are going to run out and do, but it has its place in the world. Private lending, it's a different thing. Private lending, I will tell you, when I was flipping houses, it was about 5 years that I was running a flip business. We did about 80 houses in that time frame. And most of those purchases were funded by private lenders. They were just regular people who invested into the properties that I purchased for a return. And they did really, really well, right? People used to come to me all the time and be like, I want to learn how to do what you're doing. And I'd say, no, you actually want to learn how to do what he's doing, because the guy giving me the money, he's the coolest guy in the equation. right? He's taking the least amount of risk, putting in the least amount of effort, and getting a really healthy return. So private money is typically, um, think of hard money is the other term. If you're, say, a short-term investor and you're buying and rehabbing properties, you are the vast majority of people who do that. It's very rare that people are actually doing it with their own cash. Or if they are using their own cash, it's very rare that they're using 100% of their own cash if they're operating at a reasonably large level. If they're doing one-offs here and there, they might be doing their own cash. If they're running a business that is doing that, then they have investors that are private money, hard money, those types of things. Those kinds of things are typically like 2 points up front, which would be 2% of your loan amount. And they charge anywhere from 12 to 16, 17% interest. So if you think about the math on that, that's a really good return on somebody's money, right? Now, if you want to be on the lending side of private money, that means you do have to have a chunk of capital that you're able to do that with. There are certain things you have to be aware of. There's a certain amount of loans you can do a year before there's some requirements that are going to land on you because you're considered a professional lender at that point. But point is, for somebody who has a good chunk of capital sitting around, that can be an investment strategy that yields a very, very healthy return. I can tell you the folks who funded my deals, they got a very healthy return on their money because I was usually able to return whatever amount of money they had at least twice a year. So if you think about someone who might have $300,000, $300,000, 2 points on that is going to be six. So that's 12 grand that they're making just off of points. If you flip that money twice, and then they're making 10 to 12% interest off of that money over the year also, right? There's real good money there. And the security, right? That loan is secured with an asset that is usually well below market value. Assuming you're working with an investor who knows what they're doing, they're purchasing properties significantly under market value, right? So there's plenty of equity for the person holding that note that is secured by that property. So again, it's very interesting, could be a very healthy return. I would call it high return, high risk, which is mitigated by the asset that secures the note. Probably the biggest hurdle for most people getting involved in that as an investment strategy is the amount of capital necessary in order to be able to do it. And then obviously we jump over to the active side. You've got your business, which I would say depends on what the business is. Business in general is high risk, high labor, right? Every business brings a different amount of risk to it. All of them are high labor, right? That's the secret that sometimes doesn't get told until, right? Everybody likes to believe that things are easier than they really are. There is no easy business to operate, right? They're all work. And then we have our real estate investment, obviously one that probably most of us tend to lean towards. Real estate, I would say, biggest values of real estate as an investment strategy are going to be leverage, right? Of all these asset classes we're talking about, real estate is the one that we don't have to pay for the whole thing, right? If I want to buy Apple stock, I got to pay for the whole stock. All the other investment vehicles, I have to come up with all the money to purchase whatever it is I want to purchase. So leverage is huge, right? We know we can start out purchasing a property with as little as 3.5% of our own money, yet take control of the entire asset. Fast forward, that might be 10% on the next property and 20% on the following property. But the point is, we can gain control of a valuable asset with only putting in a fraction of the cash necessary. When you hear the term cash on cash return within the real estate investing world, that's what we're talking about, right? What we're talking about is what is the return for the amount of money I had to put in, right? If I put $100,000 down on a house and I net $10,000 in positive cash flow at the end of the year, I have a 10% cash on cash return. I'm making 10% on the 100 grand that I tied up in that house. That might be a $400,000 house, but my return, cash on cash, is still 10% because I only put 100 into the property, right? So leverage is huge. Cash flow is huge because outside of dividends, those other investment vehicles do not produce income. Deductions is huge. Real estate is the only of the vehicles that we just talked about that the IRS lets us pretend are going down in value and actually take a deduction because of that. That's the depreciation deduction that we get to take. And then risk is labor, and risk, I would say, is moderate, right? Owning rental property it is not passive. Let's just say that. When you own rental property, how many people, show of hands, have currently or have owned rental property? Right. So we got a couple hands up. It's not passive, right? The reality is there is a certain amount of work that has to be done. Passive means I do nothing, right? You do have to do some things. If you have a property manager, at a minimum, you have to pay attention to the income, the expenses, communicate with the property manager. If you don't have that, who knows? You could be replacing leaky faucets and toilets. There is a certain amount of involvement that does have to exist. Risk is dependent. I would argue it's a fairly safe investment strategy as long as you make wise investments. But there can be risk depending on how you invest, right? If we're always investing for cash flow and we're not using dangerous leverage, i.e., adjustable rate mortgages, then it can be a very safe vehicle. If we're buying them right, we're making sure they cash flow and we're making sure we have secure financing that isn't going to fluctuate and harm our profitability. Then markets can go up, markets can go down, values can go up, values can go down. We only lose money if we sell while the market's down. So it can be a very, very safe vehicle. There's some additional benefits to real estate currently, which we've talked about in several of the sessions that we've done. Bonus depreciation right now is significant. Bonus depreciation allows you to take a big chunk of the depreciation on your property as a lump sum deduction in the year that you buy the property. Right? So that is significant. Can wipe out a significant amount of taxes on a significant amount of income. And here's where we have to start looking at these things and connecting the dots. Let's say you're running a real estate business that is profiting $250,000 a year, and you're just paying regular taxes on that. Right? Your tax liability on that is pretty massive. Without pulling out pen and paper, that's probably $80,000 to $90,000 in tax liability. Yet, if you set yourself up as an S corp, pay yourself a payroll, you have a solo or a SEP set up that you're pushing funds into, right? That could be 50, 30, 40, 50, $60,000 of income if you can afford to tuck it away that you could not pay taxes on, right? You purchase an investment property and take advantage of bonus depreciation, right? There could be another 50, 60, $70,000 of income that you don't have to pay taxes on, right? So these investment strategies add up to allow you to keep a significant amount of that income in your pocket so that you can turn around and reinvest it. And the important part is this, that we're reinvesting it, right? We take that out, we reinvest it, and we always, as it comes through the funnel, have the choice of saying, okay, I have the choice to spend it. I have the choice to save it. I have the choice to invest it. And I do have the choice to give it away. Those are all options. But we should be looking at it like this every time. Those returns, I'm making an intentional decision as to, okay, that goes back to the top of the funnel. And then I choose which bucket that's going to go into or what portion of it is going to go into each bucket. You might look at this and say, I'm going to run a 25-25-25 model or a 20-20-20 model, right? As my income increases, I'm going to continue to add 25% of my increased income to what I can spend, 25% to what I can give, 25% to my savings, and 25% to my investings. Well, now you have a model, right? As you continue to increase your income, both through the work that you do and the investments that you make, you know that's all swinging back to the top of the funnel. If that's your model, then you already know how that money is going to break out, which allows you to increase your lifestyle, which you've earned in a responsible way, while also increasing your cash on hand and your net worth, right? And the reality is, net worth and cash on hand is what brings financial stability and allows you to be that person that is in a position when things are tough, you can actually capitalize on opportunity. When things are good, you can capitalize on opportunity. So this I'm going to share with you. There's not a lot of people that are truly tracking their net worth. And when we're having wealth conversations, wealth is about net worth, not income, right? Biggest challenge in our industry when it comes to income, we want to talk about revenue and pretend it's profit, right? We talk about GCI. We talk about all these vanity metrics that have nothing to do with funding the life we want to live. When it comes to our businesses, we should be talking about profit and we should be focused on profit. Production is just a necessary part of the equation to produce the profit, but we should be judging our businesses and tuning up our businesses based on profit, not production. When it comes to wealth, it's net worth, right? It's net profit and net worth are the two things we should be focused on. So I'm going to share this in the chat box. There's plenty of apps and things out there that you can use. If you have those, awesome. But if you don't, and you just want a simple tool, this is just an Excel spreadsheet that allows you to just manually put your assets in, your liabilities in, and be able to keep track of that on a monthly basis so that you can actually see. I would tell you, we had an agent leadership council. So I'm not sure that everybody on the call is from Keller Williams, but if you are, you know what the agent leadership council is. We had the agent leadership council in my market center one year when we asked them, what's the number one thing we could do to help support you this year? And they said, help us stay focused on our net worth. And that year, I forget the exact number, but it was somewhere there real close to the vicinity of $1 million. I want to say it was like 890 some odd thousand or 990 some odd thousand that we increased their net worth over a 12-month period, not each cumulatively. But I think we had 5 or 6 ALC members that year. So what that meant is there was a significant improvement in their financial net worth because we just focused on it. We focused on what are your assets, what do you own, what are your debts, what can we clear, what can we add to, and by paying attention to it, they made significant progress throughout the year.
Thanks for reminding me, Matt. I was on that ALC, so I'm actually really excited to go back in and take I haven't looked at my sheet in a couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah,
But I put things in motion that are happening in the sheet. I just haven't updated the sheet in a while, so I'm actually really excited to go back into it and check it out again.
That's awesome. I love
Thanks for the nudge.
Absolutely. So let me see if I can get that to share now. If I can't get it to share now, I'll send it back out to you guys. Yeah, I'm not going to make you sit here and watch me fumble with it. So I'll send this out to you. And again, net worth is not complicated, right? All it is what do I own? What's it worth? And then what do I owe? The difference is our net worth, right? What's complicated is keeping track of it. And again, not complicated. It's just, we got to take the time to do it. We got to set the appointment to actually spend time on it. So rule number 3 is measure success in profit and net worth, net profit, net worth, and don't DIY your financials, right? So get help, get support, talk to smart people, bring professionals into your world, get guidance, some steps to take, and then we'll just open it up for dialogue and questions. So just to kind of give some order to it. Number 1, I would strongly encourage complete that net worth sheet. If you don't know where you are, you can't possibly create a plan to figure out where you're going, right? There's so many patterns in life and in business, right? When we talk about profit and loss, we talk about how do you run an effective profit and loss statement? Well, you got to know what you're doing, and you got to know what you're supposed to be doing. Supposed to be doing is my budget. Actually doing is my P&L. If I have those 2 things, all I have to do is look for gaps and then close those gaps. If I have a revenue gap, okay, in order to produce the revenue necessary to have that net profit, I need to be at this for revenue. Well, am I behind? If I am, I got to figure out how to catch up. Otherwise, I'm not going to hit the net profit. I get to look at my expenses and say, okay, I got to keep my expenses here to generate this net profit. Do I have a gap? Are my expenses too high? If they are, I got to figure out how to bring them down so that I can get the net profit. So all I'm doing is I know where I am, I know where I'm supposed to be. I look for gaps and I close them. Net worth is the same, right? We're just looking at, okay, where are we? Where do we want to be? And when we know those two things, we can start creating a plan to close a gap, right? Very simple strategy, a very simple philosophy. It's just taking the time to actually do it. So here's some things to do. Number one, take that sheet. I'm going to share it with you. Put your assets in there, right? Put the values of your assets, put all your debts in there. It's going to give you a clear picture of where you actually sit. What do you own? What is it worth? And what do I owe on all the things that I own? Number two, what's your goal? Right? Figure out exactly where is it that I want to go. Now you have exactly what we just talked about. This is where I am. This is where I want to be. Now I start creating a plan to close the gap. And here's what I would suggest. When it comes to setting those goals, I would encourage you to look at it this. Set that 10,000 meter goal. What's that someday goal? That someday goal is, someday I want to be here. Net worth of, you pick your number, 10 million, 20 million, whatever you choose. Just decide what you want that to look like. Then start reeling it back. Like, okay, if that's where I want to be someday, where do I need to be in 5 years to be on track to do that? Then what do I need to accomplish in the next 12 months? That window, that what do I need to accomplish in the next 12 months? That's where you should focus your action. Right? So to me, the action is I got to take action to get a clear vision of where I am and where I want to go. And then after that, I got to reel it back to like 100 yards, which is a year. Then that's what I'm taking action on, because that's the beginning of the journey to get to where I want to go. Like that's where you can take the big picture and we can bring it in to within a range that we can work with, right? So I'd encourage you to do those two things. Take the sheet, put your assets in there. Then what is the plan? Where do I want to be someday, 5 years today? And then what do I need to do in the next 12 months? So complete that tracker. I would put time in your calendar to revisit it, right? One of the things I heard Gary Keller say that I thought was the goofiest thing ever, and sometimes the smartest things ever are the goofiest things ever. I heard him one time say, the best financial advice I ever got early in my life was to schedule 15 minutes a day to stare at my bank accounts. It's kind of a weird thing to come out of a billionaire, like to say the best financial advice I got was to stare at my bank accounts for 15 minutes. But why would he say that? Like, why did he look back on that advice early in his life and say, you know what, that was actually smart? Like, someone unmute. What's smart about that? Austin, I thought you were reaching on mute and then you picked up your coffee, which I'm
I'll
jealous of,
do
by
it.
the way, because my coffee's empty.
You can't grow something if you don't know where it's at, right?
Yeah, man.
You got to stay
Yeah,
in proximity with it.
that's it.
Um, hey, Jay Papasan, by the way, had a great webinar about staying in touch with what was it? Dating your goals.
Yeah.
He said you got to date your goals and you have to set a date and you have to like picture like you're trying to keep your marriage alive. You got to date your goals once a week and
Yeah.
keep them in like proximity and pay attention to them or else those things won't grow, right?
Yeah.
They won't
You
change.
can't thoughtfully impact something that you don't have proximity to. Right. So if you're not paying attention to it, if you're not spending time with it, right? It's the same as if somebody says, hey, what's the most important thing in your world? And they say, it's this and it's this. Cool. Let me see your calendar. Right. Back when I was flipping houses and people would come to me and say, oh, I've always wanted to do this. I want to do this. I really want to do this. And I'd be like, cool. Like, here's what I would encourage you to do. Start figuring out how to spend less than you make so you can put money aside. Show me where you're saving money to actually go do the thing you say you want to do. And then show me your calendar and where you're blocking time to learn. whether that's going to a training, whether that's taking someone who's done it out to coffee, whatever it is. Like, show me where you're spending the time, show me where you're setting the money aside. Right. One of my favorite quotes ever. I believe this is attributed to Brian Buffini. He may have got it from somebody else. And the quote was, if you're feeling stress in your life, take a look at your calendar and your bank account. You will probably find that you are spending both time and money on things that are not in alignment with your values. So I'll say it again. If you're feeling stress in your life, take a look at your bank account and your calendar. You will probably find that you are spending both time and money on things that are not in alignment with your values, right? I.e., I really want to invest in real estate and build wealth, but I'm spending money on nonsense and not accumulating anything to be able to invest in real estate. That would be out of alignment, right? With that goal, with that belief, right? Same with the calendar, right? We look at our calendar. Where am I spending time on the things that are most important to me? Our calendar should be a reflection of our priorities, right? So if you can't open up your calendar and go, yeah, that looks like my priorities, then you probably got to work on your calendar. Because somebody should be able to open your calendar and they should know a lot about you, and it should be accurate. They should be able to look at your calendar and go, I can tell you a lot about this person, right? The question is, are they going to tell the story that actually aligns with the story you're trying to create, right? Take a look at your calendar and ask yourself that question. What questions, thoughts, or ideas do we have?
I have a thought, and I'm curious if you've done it, and maybe Karina, you too, because you've played around with AI a bunch. But like, I wonder if you've ever like put your calendar in there and asked that question, or like, what would ChatGPT say if you put be like, what do you think my goals and alignment like goal is based on what's in my calendar?
I have never done that, and I think it would be fascinating to see.
Yeah, like I'm like thinking about my own, and I'm like, probably need a little bit more in my calendar around some of my goals, but like it's also pretty clear with like what some of my values are based on my calendar. But yeah, that could be a fun exercise. And I think Jalen had put in the chat a little while ago when you were talking about Roth IRAs, when would using a Roth 401k be a better option compared to traditional? So if you did hit that, sorry, but that is in the chat.
I'm going to say you should talk to a financial advisor about that. My understanding of it. So the question was SEP and Roth, right?
Yeah, so the question stemmed from you were talking about getting your money that you're investing taxed towards the end of your retirement.
Yeah.
Which is, correct me if I'm wrong, is more traditional. And then
Yeah.
there's a Roth where you get it taxed straight up. Which one would you like lean towards more when it comes to real estate? And I guess
So this is
it's a
just,
personal choice, right?
it is a personal choice. So I'm going to answer with my personal choice. Early in life, my personal choice would be to invest pre-tax. I would want the SEP or the one of the pre-tax. I want all the money going in and compounding because I have a lot of time for that to compound.
Right.
Fast forward, if I'm further along in my life, I'm probably going to start transitioning that more to investing after tax. The general and the arguments that they'll make back and forth is the advantage one way is I have all that extra money compounding over time. The negative is,
correct.
Am I going to be at my highest taxation rate at the point that I am now withdrawing from it?
No, you
Now,
wouldn't know.
I look at that and go, well, I feel like that's something I can control. Because as a business owner, I can control my taxable income to a large degree. So for me, I look at that and say, number one, for sure, if I'm younger, again, personal, I want as much money going in and compounding over time as I can. And I have the belief that I have mechanisms within the business world to control the rate at which I'm taxed when it comes time to start drawing from it, if that makes sense.
Yes,
Yeah.
that does make sense.
The other
Thank
things
you.
that you want to talk to a professional about, because I don't know them at that level. But if you're
Okay.
looking at, I think it's the SEP and the Roth, I believe it's the SEP that allows you to put the most amount in on an annual basis if you're set up as an S corp and paying yourself as an employee. I believe it's the SEP that allows you to put the most amount in there.
Okay.
But again, those are conversations you definitely want to have. Here's the way I look at it, and here's what I try to do for you guys. My goal is always to know enough about stuff to know who to go to and what to ask them. Right? Because if I don't at least know that, then I don't know to go find out from someone who knows the details. Right. So I feel like it's my responsibility in life to be educated enough about the things that matter to know who to go to and what to ask. What I try to bring here is what I've learned doing that, but then always encourage people, like, take that information and go, okay, who do I need to go talk to and what do I need to ask? Right. As long as we're educating ourselves enough, like, we're not trying to be financial advisors, we're not trying to be CPAs, but I do believe it's incumbent upon us to know enough that we know who to go to and we know what to ask. Otherwise, we're going to miss opportunities.
The quick note just on the different types of IRAs. At a certain income level, you're not gonna be allowed to
Correct.
to invest in a Roth. So Roths are primarily something that you can use earlier and you can't use later. So when you're making more money farther down the road, you may be prohibited based on your income level. And I don't know what it is. You can ask chat or Google or whatever, but there's an income limit because I know I tripped it and found out the hard way that I couldn't invest in a Roth. We invested in a Roth one year and we had to back it out because we tripped the limit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was kind of a real pain to back it out after we did it. But yeah.
And by the way, I mean, always verify. But ChatGPT or whatever large language model you're using, they're phenomenal resources to research stuff like this. It'll help you know enough to, again, go ask intelligent questions. Make sure you're going and asking professionals, but it's amazing how quickly we can learn stuff and find out what do we need to be asking. One other thing that I'll just throw out there too, and this is obviously a whole other session, which we've done in the past, and I'm sure we'll do in the future again. One of the best wealth building strategies, which is work, but requires the least amount of capital, is when doing short-term rehabs, but converting them to rentals, right? What they call BRRRRs now. I was doing those before there was a cool name for them. It's an amazing investment strategy. Like, when you're doing that, if you think about this, what makes it so beautiful, like when I was flipping a lot of houses, I would say to my wife, like, this almost feels like it should be illegal. Like, it's incredible because, number one, it was a lot of work. It's a lot of work to find properties that you can buy at real margins that you can make real profits on. So it was a lot of work. But that being said, you find the right property, you're using someone else's money to buy the property. You're using somebody else's money to rehab the property. You're buying it at a discount, so you've got equity baked in because that's what you do when you're investing in that manner. So you're getting into the property at a discount. You're using someone else's money to take control of it, someone else's money to rehab it. Then you're putting tenants in it, refinancing out of it. So now you're paying them off with the bank's money, leaving yourself equity, sometimes even taking cash out. I would argue only if you're going to put that cash back into another investment. Don't go golfing with it. So now you've got equity, potentially cash back. You own the asset. Someone else is now paying the rent. Now you're cash flowing from it. And exactly where did you put your money into that deal? The answer is nowhere. Like, that's amazing. That is amazing that you can literally take control of an asset, build equity in the asset, even pull cash out of the asset, create cash flow, and you never put a dollar of your money in because you bought it with someone else's, you rehabbed it with someone else's, you refied it with someone else's, mortgage gets paid by someone else. Like that is a beautiful investment strategy. Now, again, it's a lot of work. You don't just find deals that you can do that with hanging out, right? You got to put a lot of work and a lot of effort into finding those deals. So, anyways, we are a little over. Any questions, comments, or anything quick before we jump? You feel good?
This was great today. Thank you.
I was going to say,
Yeah,
is
thank
this
you.
helpful? Did you guys get
Yes.
value
Yeah.
out of this today?
Tell your
Good.
friends.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah.
it's helpful just to stay in touch with the information. Like this is stuff that we talk about and then we kind of ignore in between the next webinar, right? Almost sometimes.
Yes.
And then we just think it's going to magically show up like the investment property is going to magically show up and fund itself and fill itself with tenants for us, you know.
Yeah.
So it's
Got to
like
be in
staying
your
in touch
calendar.
with
Yeah.
the goals is the big one, you know.
Yeah. It's just got to be in your calendar. Everything that matters has to be in your calendar or you're not going to do it, period. Love that.
Two quick
Appreciate you.
things. One on the calendar, I've started implementing 15 minutes after each like meeting or call that I have to do an immediate action related to that meeting or call. So then like from this, if I can't get all of this done, it would be to schedule something on my calendar to go deeper into that. The second piece is we are off next week because many of you will be at family reunion, but we're on the week after that, which is the first Tuesday of March.
I'm actually going to correct you because I haven't told you
Oh,
this. We're actually going to be gone for 2 weeks. I'm going to
okay.
apologize. One is for family reunion. And next, the Tuesday after that is the third. That is my daughter's 18th birthday. And I promised her I'd spend the whole day with her. So
That's awesome.
going to ditch
So
you guys for her if you don't mind.
always. So then the second Tuesday of March, and we'll continue to send out reminders. And I think it'll be awesome because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of family reunion packed information in there based on wealth. So don't miss it.
All right, everybody.
Everybody knows what to do for the next 15 minutes, right?
Schedule time with yourself to put this into action.
Look at my bank account.
Open
There
your
you go.
bank account. There you go.
There you go, Jalen. All right. We'll see you. Thank you, everybody.